Welcome in everybody to episode 6 of my Pro Unreal Engine tutorial series here on YouTube. Today we're going to actually start getting into developing our game, which is pretty exciting. We're going to do a few more setup things with Perforce that we forgot to do last time, but then we're actually going to make some classes and even fill out some boilerplate code. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first off, we're going to get Jira taken care of and go over to our backlog. And per usual, ignore all the tasks there at the bottom. And you just use that create issue button. For you, it'll be on the top. And make 3 tasks. One called Hookup Visual Studio and UE with P4. One called Create CCSCore plugin. And one called Create Game Framework Classes. So those are the 3 tasks we're going to be doing today. And we'll write up the description right now. And all of these are going to be under that Get Started parent issue. And the component should be engineering for all of them. Okay, so we're writing up the description here. So for this one, we're going to install and configure the Simplified Perforce Visual Studio plugin. I'll get more into that later, but the actual plugin is really bad. I find it just locks up my PC over and over again, so I use this simplified one instead. And then we're going to configure Hide, Seek, Survive to use P4V as well, and we do that inside of Unreal. So that's it for the first one. Okay, so this CCSCore plugin. So when you make games, you can put your code in one of 2 places. So by default, the code just goes into the project, which is fine if you're just making one project. But if you want to migrate code throughout multiple projects, then the better way of doing it is putting your code inside of a plugin. So that's what we're going to do there with that CCSCore plugin. And then for the game framework classes, that's basically the 4 classes we're going to be making. And feel free to pause to copy these descriptions, obviously. And yeah, we can click all of them and drag them into our board. And then we'll be ready to go. But yeah, if you need to, again, just pause and copy the descriptions. So we'll get that Hookup Visual Studio and UE with P4 task into in progress. And you see this Reddit post where that user talks about the plugin that they wrote. And I find it actually works out really well, so shout out to him. But yeah, it's actually supported in the Visual Studio Marketplace, which is pretty cool. So we'll open up P4V. Make sure we're all good. And we'll open up our solution. You'll see me just checking the name. And now we're going to go to that Manage Extensions. And we can search for it. And there it is, the P4 Simple SCC by Jeffrey Broom. So shout out to Jeffrey, you made a pretty great plugin. But yeah, so see the ratings on that one. I know it's only 3 ratings, but then look at this one. Yeah, this is the official plugin, and people tend to hate it. So that's not great, and that's why we're not going to use it, because I don't want you guys to be bricking your PC for no reason. So we need to close it down to install the plugin. And you just hit modify here, and it'll take care of installing it. And bear with me here, I hadn't set this up in a long time, so I forgot how to actually do it. So I think I'm just going to skip ahead while I struggled through setting this up. And just sit tight. Eventually, I figure out how to do it. Yeah, I'm just going to skip ahead through this part because I'm just clicking around trying to figure out where to put the information in. Yeah, and after watching back the part that I cut out here, I actually thought that I set everything up correctly, and I didn't. So we'll just do that later in the video once I figure it out. Alright, so now we need to open Unreal. Oh, and I opened the wrong project. Yeah, Creators is going well, but we're working on Hide, Seek, Survive. And if you ever get that pop-up, the following modules are built with a different engine version, it's no big deal. Yeah, so it's opening up Creators still. But yeah, if that pop-up ever happens to you, all you need to do is go into your IDE, so Visual Studio, and just build it again. And it should fix the issue. So no big deal. I know it's a scary looking pop-up, but it's gonna be okay, I promise. And this should build pretty quick. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so now we can open up Hide, Seek, Survive and get it configured with Perforce. And yeah, that process is actually really easy. So you just go down to revision control there, connect to revision control, and choose Perforce, obviously. And all this should autocomplete, and you should be able to see your workspace in available workspaces. And you see I move it to review and done. It's not really done, but we'll fix that before this video is over. And now we're going to do a couple of housekeeping things inside of the editor. So edit editor preferences and change that asset editor open location to main window. Just trust me, it'll make it a lot better. And then source code editor, we want this to be Visual Studio 2022. And you got to restart to apply that. And then we'll open it up again. All right. Yep, Visual Studio 2022. And we get our project settings. And we want to make this Hide, Seek, Survive. And I'm not going to fill out all this except for the copyright notice. So just throw something in there. And yeah, by the way, any code I write in this series, feel free to use it. Just don't go throw it on GitHub somewhere. Alright, and so we're going to go to plugins. And edit plugins, make a new plugin, and we want it to be blank. And we're going to call it CCSCore. Now put me as the author. You can put you as the author. That's fine. Because this is going to be your plugin that you're going to be using throughout the entire time you're using Unreal. And basically, it just gives you a code base that you can add to over time. So when you start a new game, you'll be able to very easily carry over your code to it, which is a very powerful thing. Because stuff like making the base game mode and getting the character walking is something you're going to have to do in every game you make. So it's better to just not have to do it over and over again. It'll just be easier. So yeah, we can click over to Visual Studio and it'll prompt us to reload. Okay, so our plugin was created successfully, so that's good. And as you can see, our revision control got screwed up. So every once in a while, you have to do it again. But yeah, just look for that little check, and then revision control is working. And you see I checked to see if the plugin got added, and it didn't. So I'm going to add it manually. And don't do this part, because I made a mistake. Yeah, so now I'm going to check the extensions again. Trying to figure out how this extension works. Yeah, so options. And then under source control, we want to change it to the name of that plugin and then press OK. Yeah, I realized it wasn't working correctly when I didn't see it added there when we checked. Because if everything's working correctly, it should add everything automatically, and it wasn't doing that. And there's one more menu I need to find, so let's see how long it takes me to find it. Yeah, I might skip ahead here because I think this is going to take a while. Alright, so after longer than I'd like to admit of looking for it, you go to extensions and then click on that. So extensions, P4 simple, SCC, solution configuration. And if you type automatic, everything will come up other than the P4 client. And after doing this, the P4 client is the name of your workspace in Unreal. So here I'm trying to figure out what the name of my workspace is. And I'm pretty sure I do this incorrectly the first time. But yeah, you can go to manual settings and your port will be 166 and the user will be whatever your user was. And see, I make it Camp and Carl Dev1, so I actually did do it correctly, so that's good. So now this plugin will be working. I think at this time I still wasn't confident that it was working, but I actually did everything correctly, so that's good to know. And now I'm checking to make sure we can see the plugins folder, and then CCSCore is actually in there, so that's good. Yeah, it still isn't getting added because the plugin wasn't working. And yeah, don't do this part because we don't want to add the whole plugin. We just want to add certain folders like we did the last time. Yeah, so now I realized I added the binaries, which I didn't want to do. So you can always revert the files and just revert them all like I did. And yeah, so we're going to add content, source, and then the U project file and resources. So once we have all those selected, mark for add, and then just make a change set called adding CCSCore plugin. And we don't want to submit yet. Still a bit of indecision here. And we're going to close everything down and reopen it. Just to make sure we can see everything and it's all working okay. Okay. Yeah, because as tedious as it seems, we really need to make sure we're sticking to one change list for one task. So right now I'm going through the review process for this task. Right, so we build it, and now we're going to delete the build in that hide, seek, survive builds. Okay, so now we're opening it up and we're going to package the project. And this, again, a lot of people will see as tedious as we move it into review. But this pretty much ensures that you're not going to be the one to screw up the project. Because if you didn't package the project and you somehow did something that made it so the project packaging failed, and you were working on a team in your job, and then that change set made it onto the main branch, and everybody pulled it to their branch, then people have to revert work. It just gets really ugly, and people blame you. And it's just not a good situation to be in. So, bottom line, package the project like we did there every single time. And then you know that you're not going to be responsible for making other people revert work. I know it seems tedious, but just click package like we did there, go get a drink of water or something, and then it'll be done before you know it, and you can be extra safe and not have to revert your work. Sorry for that little tangent there, but it's an issue I've ran into time and time again, and it can be fixed very easily by just pressing a button and waiting a few minutes. So that's what we're going to do from the start, and I hope you do that throughout your Unreal Engine development journey. But yeah, I'll just skip ahead until this finishes. And again, sorry for the rant there, but I told you guys good habits from the start, and that's what we're sticking to. Alright, so we're back a few minutes later. Everything's all packaged, so we can close it down. And then we're going to go into our builds folder and make sure that everything looks okay. Yup. Alright, close it down, and that was it. So now we can go back to our task and move it into done. And move the next one into in progress. And unfortunately, now that I'm watching this back, I realize I did exactly what I said not to do, and I'm putting another task on the same change list. Just because I forgot. Not the biggest deal, but not great. So you can feel free to submit the change list and make a new one for this task. It's one of those things, do as I say, not as I do. But hey, people forget things, it's no big deal. Alright, so we're going to open it up here. And you can click that content drawer. And Control Spacebar is the shortcut, which is what I typically use. And we're going to actually make some code here, so that's exciting. Alright, so we go to C++ classes and create new C++ class. And the first one we're going to make here is the game mode. And we'll scroll down. And there it is. Yeah, so it basically defines the game that's being played. And this is where you put stuff like spawning in players, changes in the map, anything like that that's specific to the game mode that you're playing. And we're actually going to go to all classes and search for game mode because we want game mode, not game mode base. Game mode contains some additional multiplayer functionality that we're going to need when we go make a multiplayer game. So hide, seek, survive isn't that, but later on we'll need it. So might as well include it now. And we can call it game mode CCS. And we want to make it public and on CCSCore. And I actually made a mistake here, but I'm going to let it run because this is something that you're probably going to do on your own, and I want to show you how to fix it. So create class. And you want to wait until it's done adding the code before you refresh the files in Visual Studio. And you can see down at the bottom we have server unavailable. So I don't think this is going to get added correctly. And I like to move the .cpp to the right. And right here I realized I made a mistake. So typically, yeah, so our server is unavailable. It's not a big deal. And here is where I realized that I made a mistake. So typically you want to keep the top level folder, so that public folder within the plugin, clean. So I should have put that file in another folder within the public folder, not just on the top level like I did. All right, so let's fix it. So all we have to do is go into public and make a folder, and we're going to call it game framework. And then we just grab it, Control X and Control V. And see, now it's not in that top level folder anymore. And we need to do the same thing in private. So same thing, game framework. And make sure you spell it the same as you did in the public folder. But yeah, so then we paste the .cpp in. And we go to CCSCore. And now we're going to need to delete the binaries and intermediate. Okay, so delete both of those, because we're going to have to rebuild to make sure this worked correctly. Okay, so generate the project files. And we'll wait a second here. And we still aren't getting the pop-up that you typically get, so we'll go back into CCSCore and wait for intermediate to show up. And there it is. And so that's how we know that the project files actually got regenerated. So now we can go back to our solution and we can rebuild. And see it can't find them anymore because we moved them. So you can just close those down. And we have to actually go to the game mode CCS.h, which is in the public game framework folder. And yeah, so see the game mode CCS.ccp, it can't find the game mode CCS.h. We have to change it to game framework / game mode CCS. So that, if I went a little too quickly, that's in the private. So you can see it on the right there. But yeah, if you don't make that change, you're going to get a build error. So definitely make that change. Yeah, and we can see that it didn't get added like I would have expected. I think it's due to that server unavailable error. So if you didn't get that, you should see it there. But for me, I have to manually add it, which isn't a big deal. So yeah, we just have to make sure we add both of them. So mark for add. throw it on that same change list. Again, you should probably make another one, but I'll just add it to the same change list. And we always want to get everything out of that default change list. We want only numbered change lists. Alright, so we added the .h and the .cpp. So now everything is added and all up to date. We packaged correctly too. So now we fixed that issue. Because it's one of those things that took us 5 minutes to fix right now. But later on, it would have been really annoying if we have too many files in that folder. Alright, so now we can go back into our content drawer and go to plugins, and we'll see CCSCore C++ classes, and we can click into public and game framework, and we can see it there. So now we get our new C++ class, and this time we're going to search for game state. Yeah, so this is the same thing. This game state has multiplayer functionality. But yeah, game state, it basically just shows the game's global state. So it's where you would put stuff like a scoreboard, that kind of thing that all players need to have access to. That won't matter a ton in this project because it isn't multiplayer, but good habits are good to start early. So we want to make a game state, not a game state base, and we can call it game state CCS and see how it automatically puts it in the game framework. So we won't make that mistake again. And we're all connected to revision control as well. So this should get added automatically. And if it doesn't, you just do what we did for the game mode and add it manually. Yeah, so we can reload. And we can see it there, which is a good sign. And again, CPP on the right. And see it got added. So we're going to click them and move them into that numbered change list. So just move to another change list and get it out of that default one. Alright, so next we're going to have the player state. And the player state is another aspect of this game framework. And this one basically only contains things that have to do with the player. It's replicated to all clients, but it will contain things about the player, like health is a good example, ammo count, just anything you want other players to have access to that have to do with a player. Again, it's more of a networking thing, and it might not make sense now, but you'll learn more about it as we start using it. Okay, so that's all set. We can reload again. We're getting an error from the plugin, which is fine. Alright, so we slide over the .cpp. And it doesn't look like it got added. Oh, we refresh and it worked. So again, move it over to the numbered change list. Okay, looking good. And the next one is going to be the game instance. So the game instance, it exists locally on the machine that we're playing on, and it's used to store information that we want to persist between levels. So in Unreal, every time you press play, you're on a level. So we have the third person map there, for example. And so, say we want to move to another level, but we want it to remember what our health was. Then we would store that health value on the game instance and pull from it, and we would be able to remember what our health value was. It's a small example, but that's what it's used for. And we again got that server unavailable issue. So we're going to have to close everything down and reopen it. But yeah, don't worry if you're confused by my explanations. It's one of those things that'll make more sense to you as we go through it. And here we can only see the game mode CCS in the engine, which isn't good. That means something weird is happening. So I'm going to check to see. Yeah, we can't see anything. So something is up. Yeah, so we can see it in Visual Studio, but not in the engine. The live coding thing is great, but sometimes it doesn't work correctly. Unfortunately. Okay, so now we're going to write some boilerplate code, and we'll start with the game mode. And I'm going to assume you've never seen C++ code before. So we have right there that class, the A game mode CCS. So that's the class that we made. And that next word is telling us that we're inheriting from A game mode. And we can actually go in here, and that's not the right thing to click. And if we go to definition, we can read here what actually is in the game mode. And we can look up online. I'll show you how to do that later. Better documentation. But you can actually look at the code, which is pretty great. But yeah, so assuming you've never seen C++ before, the .h file is like the table of contents, and the .cpp is like the book. So the .h is telling us what is going to be in the .cpp, and the .cpp is the actual code that does things. So we're going to get rid of that extra line at the bottom, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see better. And this little line up at the top here, so those, basically if it shows up as green like that, that means it's commented. So the compiler will just ignore this, and it's just there to help us keep track of what we're doing. So at the top of each header file, which is the .h, we're going to write a little description of what the class is doing. And at the end of me writing this, just pause and copy it. But as you can see, I'm just writing that this is going to be the game mode that we're going to inherit from. And there's no real functionality in there yet, because it's just a blank file right now. So feel free to pause and copy that. But then after that, I add what's called an author tag. So I just put me as the author. You can put you as the author. But yeah, so that's all the what I'll call boilerplate code we have to do for this one. And then we can go to the .cpp and just get rid of that extra space. I don't know why that's there, but it always annoys me, so I get rid of it. Okay, so we can close those down, and we'll move on to the game state, and we're pretty much going to do the exact same thing. And the reason that pop-up came up is because I saved, and sometimes if that comes up, you just have to close it down and save again. And the hotkey to save in Visual Studio is Control S, for those who are wondering. And you can do Control AS, will save everything. Alright, so same thing, we're just using our comment field up at the top. And by the way, you can make as many comments as you want, and it's good to over-comment code, and that's something I'm going to try to convey very heavily throughout this. There's no better way to make people you're working with like you than to comment your code really heavily. So that's what I'm going to teach you to do from the jump, so you'll do it automatically. So yeah, just feel free to pause and copy that. And then we're going to add our author tag. And we're looking good. Then we'll go to our .cpp and get rid of that extra space again. Now we'll go to the player state, and we're just going to do the exact same thing. And all we're doing here is we're getting these classes ready to actually do things with later. So now when we go to add code to this, the boilerplate will be all set up and we'll be ready to actually program functionality. So that'll be good. And yeah, you can see again, I'm just saying this is the main player state for the plugin. So what we're going to be doing in this one is putting in common functionality that we're always going to need. So we're going to, in a future video, make another plugin for hide, seek, survive, and that is going to inherit from this class. It'll make more sense as we're going, but it just means that it'll make it easier for us to migrate code to new games. So yeah, same thing, just pause, copy that over, and you'll be all good. Alright, so the game instance, same thing. Fill out our little comment and pause at the end. So we'll just keep typing this out, and we're just going to inherit from this, as I said. And next time, we're going to get into making our character code, which is going to be pretty cool. I know this intro stuff has taken a long time, but hopefully we won't have to do it again, so that'll be good. And yeah, again, we're just saying this doesn't have any functionality yet, but it's here for when we're going to need it. Okay, so now we're going to open up the other 3 header files because I decided to put a version tag in here. And just don't copy this yet. I screwed this up the first time. But what it's going to be is at version and then hide, seek, survive, dev is the final result. Just on autopilot with putting the at author. Yeah, so just like that, and you just copy it and paste it. So this way, if we're ever looking at this in the future, we know when this file was last edited. Because when we make our next project, there's going to be another version of this plugin. And it can get a little confusing when you have multiple versions of it. So that's why we're doing that. Alright, so all our boilerplate is filled out, and we can build again. So in theory, we're done with this task, assuming everything works and we're able to package it up successfully. So I'm going back to my hide, seek, survive builds, deleting the build. Okay, so it built, and we're going to open it up. Yep, so we can see all of them again. I don't know what was happening earlier. And just double checking that everything is in that commit, and it isn't. You see we're missing the game instance. So we'll just add them manually. Yeah, not a good showing for that plugin so far. Admittedly, it was my fault in the beginning because I didn't set it up correctly, but it is what it is. Alright, so Windows Package Project, and it remembers your last location. And I'll just skip ahead until the packaging is done, and hopefully it'll work, and we can call this task done. And once it succeeds, we just submit that change list like we did before, and that's it. So now we see our build was successful, and don't be confused that this isn't submitted yet. I forgot to actually submit the change set. So that little thing of me submitting it was some post-editing magic. But yeah, we can go to our board and throw this into done. And when you're done with the task, I like to add a little comment and say the change list number. So that way they're linked, and if we ever need to look at this change list again, we have the number right here in Jira. So for you, it probably won't be 34, but just whatever that number is. And you can just throw it in there for all of these. And yeah, I know this was a bit of a long one, so thanks for sticking with me. But yeah, just paste it in. And next time, we're going to get into setting up our character classes. So that'll be more boilerplate and me explaining what the classes are and what they do. But then the time after that, we're going to get our character moving, which is going to be pretty cool. Alright, so thank you so much again, as always, for watching. And please give the video a like. Leave me a comment to let me know if anybody is actually following along with these and how it's going. And subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with the rest of this series, because I plan on keeping this going for quite some time. So with all that being said, thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.